In this final video, we're going to go over the last questions to the exam that had to do with factoring and solving using factors. So here we had to factor this expression. It's a trinomial. But first, you always have to look for a GCF. Which is a number variable that all terms can be divided by. So here I notice everything can be divided by 2. So that means I can factor out a 2. And then if I divide everything by 2, I'll see what 2 is multiplied by to get the original expression. Remember, factors are what you multiply to get the expression. So here, if I divide by 2, these cancel. I get n squared minus 5n minus 14. Then on the inside here, I have a trinomial. So I'm going to use my blank method. Let me set up my factors. This is going to end up turning into 2 new parentheses. Both start with n and n because n times n is n squared. Remember, we're figuring out what they multiplied to get this factor. So I'm going to use my blank method. So I use my last number. So blank times blank is negative 14. Then blank plus blank is middle number, negative 5. So I make a list of numbers that gives me 14. And I want to see which of those I can add or subtract to get a 5. I can do, if I want negative 5, 2 minus 7. So that means my numbers are going to be a 2 and a negative 7. So here in my factors, I'll put a positive 2 and a negative 7. And those are my factors for this problem. If you were to multiply 2 times n plus 2 times n minus 7, you would get back what you started with. In this next problem, we're going to factor. Again, you always look for a GCF first. Here, my GCF would be, if you're looking at the numbers of 5, because both of those can be divided by 5. Both of them have an a. When you want to do one that they can be divided by. So a squared can be divided by a, but a can't be divided by a squared because you'll get a negative exponent. So same thing, we can also factor out a b here. So the greatest common factor would be 5ab, so I'm going to factor that out. And I can divide to see what that was multiplied by to get the original expression. So 15 divided by 5 is 3. A squared divided by a is a. And b divided by b, the b's cancel. Then 10 divided by 5 is 2. Here my a's cancel. B squared divided by b is b. So these would be my factors. I can't factor the inside anymore because there's no exponents there to show that it was multiplied to get that. This next question, we're also factoring, but we're solving using factors. So I'm going to start by looking for GCF. Here I don't notice a number that everything can be divided by, but I notice that everything has an a. So I'm going to factor out an a. A cubed divided by a is a squared. Remember, when you divide, you subtract exponents. A squared divided by a is a. Here the a's cancel, so I'm just left with 14. Here on the inside, I have a trinomial. So that means I can rewrite it as 2 parentheses. Both are going to start with a, because a times a would give us that a squared. So now I'm going to use my blank method. My first blank is going to equal 13. My last blank is going to equal the negative 9. Here if I want negative 9, sorry, this should be a 7. 2 plus 7 is 9. Since you have to add, that means the signs have to be the same. So they're both going to be negative. So here I would have a -2 and a -7. This time we're not done. Those are our factors. But now when you're solving, you're going to set each of these equal to 0 individually and solve for A. Here we already have our answer. Here the opposite of -2 would be to add 2. Here the opposite of -7 would be to add 7. So our solutions are 0, 2, and 7. Here on our last problem, we had a binomial. First, I'm going to look for GCF. I noticed that both of these have an n and can be divided by the n squared. So I'm going to factor that out. N to the 4th divided by n squared is n squared. Here the n squareds cancel. You could even factor this further, or you can actually solve from here. I'm going to save some time and let's solve it. So let's set each of these factors equal to 0. Here the opposite of squaring if you're solving is to square root. The square root of 0 is just 0. So one of our solutions will be 0. Here we're going to add 49 to both sides. So I get n squared equals 49. And then the opposite of squaring is to square root. When you square root and the number is not 0, you're going to have a positive and a negative solution. The square root of 49 is 7. This makes sense because 7 times 7, or 7 squared, is 49. And -7 times -7 is also 49. So here we really have 3 answers. It would be n equals 0, -7, and +7. You can use these videos to help you make corrections to the Chapter 5 test. You can also use them to help you complete the makeup test.